You know, I have been before the committee probably the last 5 years, and we've talked about the data center industry. And I know, Senator Romine, you're somewhat new to the issue, so I just want to spend a couple of seconds talking about the data center industry, and then I really want to hit on what the compromise language is and talk about that just really briefly. And Senator Parson really kind of explained the data center as a warehouse of data processing. That's exactly what it is. We're all customers of data centers. Every time you use your phone, the data that goes through that is processed through a data center and warehoused in that. And it's crucial to businesses that have to constantly maintain data. So hospitals, for example, with Hurricane Sandy, most of the hospitals around the country try to utilize a data center in the Midwest, and many of them do utilize Cerner. That way, when they have a hurricane situation that goes down, all that data is maintained. Financial institutions is another example, the government. And so it's very important to business, both large and small. But another way to look at data centers really is an investment in our infrastructure. So when we talk about infrastructure in our normal day lives, we really think about the roads and sewers. Well, data center is the infrastructure to what makes the internet work, and it provides that in that infrastructure. So we did want to look at it in that way. When we talk about warehousing, I think the senator pointed out the difference in the cost of square footage. So there is a huge financial investment, and it is a large industry, $100 billion, worldwide, $30 billion industry just in the United States alone. So if we could just capture 5% of that, we're talking a significant amount of capital investment here. The good news is we have a lot to offer. We have the low cost of power, the availability of fiber, the deep IT talent pool that we get from our fabulous private and public institutions across the state. The bad news is we're losing out to losing our businesses to other states within the Midwest. For a $100,000 square foot data center, just as the incentives are in place right now, it costs $15 million more to construct the data center in Missouri than it would in, let's say, perhaps Kansas or Nebraska. So that's just a brief description, overview of the legislation. He kind of went through that. This started out really just to be a complete sales tax exemption. We're going to treat data centers like we treat manufacturers, and exempting anything used or consumed to build, construct, and maintain that data center. That the fiscal impact was pretty significant, and the Data Center Coalition was pretty sensitive to that. So we've worked the last 5 years to finally come with a compromise that was structured around the Department of Economic Development, the Missouri Chamber with some members of the Data Center Coalition, and also with some members at the time, and I think Senator Schmidt, you were participating in some of those meetings, also with Senator Lager. So you have a structure in place that's not a tax credit, it's an actual rebate. So they build the data center, they make application, they put in a notice of intent of what the project plan is going to be. The Department of Economic Development runs that to REMI and says, based on the state's guaranteed one-to-one return on investment, you're eligible for X amount of incentives. Then they go out, they build the data center, they make the purchases, they pay the sales tax, and they come back and ask for a rebate of those taxes. So there's the guarantee that's in there that the data center will be built. But there are clawback provisions, which we think is very important, so that if for some reason they start to get the refund, but they don't follow through with the remaining of the project that showed the one-to-one ROI, then the state can go back after the money. The only other thing I wanted to add is the sales tax is one piece. There's another part to that is a provision that's a completely optional tool for the cities and counties to be able to abate their property taxes. Right now, in order to abate the property tax, you have to go through this leaseback option and take out Chapter 100 bonds. It's very cumbersome for the city to do that, so it provides pretty much the same option without issuing the bond indebtedness that's out there. We have asked, we had the compromise, there are 3 minor changes that we have asked to make that don't really do anything with the framework of the compromise. Changes to the notice intent and application so that different size data centers can apply and get awarded benefits so long as they still meet the one-to-one ROI. We're also trying to make sure the exemptions for existing data centers mirror what the new data centers are. And then we want to really look into, and this isn't a substitute at this point, but what is a new job for a data center, which is more of a service industry versus more of an advanced manufacturing, where you have somebody who comes in and they work 40 hours a week and that's their job in that facility. A data center, you'll have those FTE that are actually structured in that, but you also have jobs that exist purely because the data exists in the data center, and those are your high-tech service engineer type of people. And so is there some way to define that so we can bring those in more of like a but-for test, that if it wasn't for the data center and the data being processed, that they wouldn't have a position? And the other thing I'll just throw out, construction jobs with the RIMI model are always considered temporary, but these construction jobs are actually the project in Omaha, Nebraska. They have several hundred construction workers who have actually moved their families there. They'll work 7 days a week one individual won't, but they'll have enough work for 7 days a week for 3 to 4 years. So the question is really, when is a construction job temporary and when does it become permanent? So we'll be working on that new job piece, and hopefully within the next week or so, any of the changes we'll get with those that were part of the compromise, and we'll make sure everyone's still on board.